Okay, all of
Not
these like BuzzFeed quizzes and things, I don't think they're actually really telling you, oh, are you a Joey or are you
Yeah.
like no. That's at best it's going to be a simplification. Uh like I think
Hello, welcome to the Metaverse
oh, you what?
Degen. I'm Lion.
I'm Old Man Raptor, and our guest is.
Sotalo.
Thank you very much for joining us, Sotalo. It's very much appreciated for your time.
Yes, we appreciate
Oh,
it.
no problem.
Hmm.
Thank you. And
No
thank you for
problem.
having me.
Not a problem. So, what gave you the inspiration for making this museum? How did the idea come to be in fruition?
Mm. Well, I had a trip to New York with my cousin, and I really wanted to see some more art galleries. And
Hmm.
I thought it'd be really cool to see MoMA, Museum of Modern Art.
Hmm.
Uh, so we went there, and I saw a few animals, and nothing really anthro. There's maybe one anthro piece in an entire museum of hundreds upon hundreds of pieces, like thousands of pieces.
Hmm.
Uh, so it was clear that there was a voice missing. It was our voice. And ever since then, I wanted to make a museum that was just our voice.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah,
Okay. So,
yeah.
how, what gave you the inspiration for the setup? Like how you have everything laid out? Because you have different floors in art, you have the history in the bottom, and then you have the art pieces up here. What helps you get this far, and the community too?
I'm really glad you actually asked that. There were several things that I knew I wanted. Like I wanted to have a courtyard with like a garden of some kind, something interesting to look at. I wanted to have a nice grand entryway coming into the museum, and I wanted from the view of the lobby, you can't really see any furry art. You have to enter the museum in order to see the art. So then, walking up, you get the mirror. You can take a moment to reflect on yourself and look behind you and see the maze and everything back there. And the whole museum is set up so that you can find your friends effectively in 30 seconds.
Hmm.
Uh, it's actually a very easy layout. It's just kind of like a little S pattern on the bottom, and then you can go upstairs, and it's just the two floors.
Hmm.
Uh, so each there's 5 rooms, and they're all themed, and they can be themed after anything. But I knew I wanted the first room to be something that it like just full of art that everyone would appreciate. Everyone would love it and look at it.
Hmm.
The kind of thing that uh, for instance, the '90s video game mascots.
Hmm.
Uh, I'll have people who are in Master Chief uh, avatars and people in anime avatars and furries all going around that exhibit and saying the same thing. Oh, I loved playing that game when I was a kid.
Hmm.
Um, so it's kind of the room where like that everyone loves and everyone can coalesce and come together. And it's a big, grand like you have all Tenshu Hai's 100 headshots. Um, like after that room, I wanted to have something spectacular, something that was sparkly and ooh shiny.
Hmm.
And I thought it would be cool to have like a room that's dark, and then the floor is sparkling and completely lit by the artwork.
Hmm.
So you go into the main room, you see just a little bit of everything in the museum and a lot of stuff that brings people together. And then you go in the next room, and it's like something completely different.
Hmm.
And then the third room, originally it was going to be an auxiliary. It was going to be the room that I just threw stuff in that didn't really fit anywhere else. But then it eventually became the weird room,
Hmm.
uh, and it became the uncomfortably weird room. uh, yeah, and I have the infamous subculture exhibit in there.
Hmm.
But I also have Hearthfox in there, who's our resident Therian, someone who feels like they're actually an animal.
Ah.
And then after that, like it kind of the rooms make themselves. When I first started the museum, people were like, "Put your art in here," because I was showing my friends update after update after update, and it was just white walls.
Hmm.
Um, and then I was like, okay, I put my art up here, and then it was a bright sunny day originally. Now it's Halloween and it's very dark, but a bright sunny day. I had a lot of light coming up here. It was a very open, a very high ceiling, a very bright open atmosphere,
Hmm.
and it just felt right to make the top space more like a almost like a traditional gallery.
Okay.
Um, with very contemporary things like experiments with line, shape, and color. And that's what a lot of my art ended up being too. Uh, so the top gallery is that, and we also have Panda Paco in there. Um, and then on the other side, the history exhibit, it's a whole story how that got uh, put up there, but it's kind of past, present, future.
Hmm.
So you can see like the Roman exhibit, or not the, I'm sorry, not Roman, the Egyptian exhibit, and then the Roman Hermanubis statue after Rome had conquered Egypt and Greece and started combining gods together.
Hmm.
Um, and along with that, you have the history of the furry fandom, uh, which covers a lot of stuff that um, Mark Marlino did with Conference Zero and the CFO, as well as the APA fanzines and the internet. And then on the right side, you have more uh, uh, science fiction pieces, a whole bunch of entire wall by Kiyun, as well as a little display for Myro, the guy who helped me make the world. So it's kind of past, present, and future.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, and also Ferret Studios, which beautifully done patterns,
Okay.
uh, incredibly intricate pattern work. So it's like the different rooms have different themes, and the themes just kind of grow naturally out of the artists that uh, accept and say yes, and uh, then you get one artist that's really big, and then you make a lot of pieces around that, and then
Hmm.
that influences other things. So it's a very natural process.
Okay. So, with a lot of your art and the exhibits you have in here, how did you reach out to the people, and or did it come more of a natural thing or spread word of mouth? Like, how did you get all the various exhibits from other people here?
Oh, the funny thing is, it was extremely difficult to start with.
Hmm.
I had reached out to so many artists, but like people had no idea of the concept. Like making
Hmm.
a museum in VR, it just didn't make much sense to people in VR chat.
Hmm.
Uh, and I didn't get a lot of bites. So then I
Hmm.
started asking my friends and people who had been recommended to me. And then once I got a few pieces of art in here,
Hmm.
um, like I did go through people that I favorited on DeviantArt and stuff. But once I got more and more people, I started asking bigger and better artists, so to speak.
Hmm.
So like a lot of artists are people that I had met personally, or they're people that I admire, people that I had known. But then I did a lot of research and I found other people. Um, it's really a grab bag of everything under the sun. I mean, there's people in here that I had no idea existed. So many people I had no idea existed until I did the research, and people I had done like tons and tons and tons of research trying to find things. And
Hmm.
it's some unknown person who made only a few pieces on Fur Affinity.
Hmm.
Uh, like there's all sorts of stuff in here. People I'd known for decades and people that I just met.
Okay. So, I'm going to ask you a random question. So, what
Okay.
started the? You may know, you have history of the fandom here. What started everything for the furry fandom and all of that? How did all this come to be as we know it?
What started the fandom?
Yeah.
What started the fandom?
Hmm.
Um, what's really interesting, Silas and I had conversations about this. He's the guy who, directed the conference 0 through 10 and
Hmm.
the Cartoon Fantasy Organization.
Hmm.
Uh, he says you can't really turn someone into a furry.
Hmm.
That you're kind of born that way. You kind of there's something in you that makes you a furry, and that thing that's in you isn't something new. I mean, thousands of years ago, people had been making anthro art, and you had people admiring anthro art
Hmm.
even before Disney was a thing.
Hmm.
So the whole idea that Disney made everyone furries is completely false. There were people in ancient Egypt drawing on papyrus and hiding it from people, furry porn,
Ah.
like a lion and a gazelle
Hmm.
doing it in bed, and and also animals just doing everyday human things. And artists were drawing this even at a time when it was incredibly unpopular to have animals doing this work.
Hmm.
Like Cornelis Soft-Levin downstairs was only 22 years old when he made
Hmm.
that piece.
Hmm.
He was only 22 years old when he painted this kind of satirical piece with a bunch of different people and anthro animals and real animals all put together.
Hmm.
And it looks beautiful. It looks like the kind of art you'd have in a textbook, or in some kind of history book. But he was only 22 when he painted it,
Hmm.
and I like he didn't paint it. I don't think he painted it for anyone. He painted it for fun. It was a satire.
Hmm. Okay. So that's
But
the.
if
Hmm.
you want, but I can tell you though, the modern furry fandom,
Hmm.
there is kind of a few things that got it going and got it started. Um, Mark Merlino kind of was a fan of animation, and he wanted to get people together. So he helped co-found the CFO, the Cartoon Fantasy Organization, which included people who are professionals in the industry, along with some fans. And he represented very much the fan portion of that, the people who admire and love this work.
Hmm.
Um, and there were plenty of people who just love animals and anthro animals and cartoon animals.
Hmm.
And there's nothing that really explains it, but that was from that it grew. He got more and more people. They were going to science fiction conventions and hosting furry room parties. They were becoming more popular, and then it got big enough that they were able to throw their own convention. Um, gathering all these different people that were just people just kind of doing their own thing, and brought them all together in one place.
Okay.
And then it just grew and grew and grew and grew from there.
Alrighty. That's actually really interesting to know. I did not know any of that. Um. So
Yeah.
what about the costume portion of the furry fandom? You know, the fursuits and all of that. Do you have any idea about that off the top of your head? If
So
not, it's
there were
fine.
several people initially in Conference Zero.
Hmm.
There were not that many fursuits. There was like one or two, and I think like Silas would be a better person to go to. He
Hmm.
keeps mentioning. I think it was like what is it? The Bambi. There was someone who kind of it was like a studded leather version of a Bambioid,
Hmm.
uh, and that was one of the first fursuits ever made.
Hmm.
What was really popular or more popular back then was actually body paints.
Hmm.
People would actually paint their whole bodies with like tiger stripes or leopard stripes or leopard spots rather. Um, that kind of thing.
Okay.
That's not very common anymore. Uh, but when people saw the fursuits, it was like, oh wow, yeah, that would be interesting to do that. And then it kind of happened, I think, around the same time. Again, Silas would be really a lot better person for this than I would on this, but I think it was around the same time that fursuits and personas became popular.
Hmm.
Yeah, because most people who were furries back then were just kind of making cartoons. They weren't making furries of themselves. Yeah.
Okay. That's
And then
actually
fursuits just took off,
Hmm.
after that.
all right. That's actually super interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And you're doing fine.
Yeah, again, if there was stuff you wanted me to research, I told you it would be better to let me know in advance so I can
I
get the
do
answer for you.
apologize. I should have asked or let you know, but I also didn't know I was
Oh,
going to
that's
ask
all
those
right.
questions. That's kind of, as I said,
Oh, there's a lot.
I
There's a lot that I do know.
like what?
Yeah, but then there's a lot I don't.
Tell us something you do know.
Something I do know.
Hmm.
Wow, you left that an open circle and jump off the pier. Holy criminy. I mean, I go to, hey, you know how to fix my car? Do you know anything about it? Yeah, I'm a mechanic, but I don't, I'm just here to fix it. No problem.
I know. I'm such a nice person.
Oh, that's not what I was getting at.
I know.
For me to ask a few questions and stuff like this, this is my first time being in your world and everything else like this. You catch for being. I don't look myself as being a furry. I was a Bugs Bunny fanatic when I was a kid. Still am. I collect Bugs Bunny stuff like this because that was my era and stuff like this.
Well, why don't you consider yourself being a furry?
Well, to me, I don't look at myself that way. I like foxes. I love true foxes. I love the way a fox is intelligent, it's animal and stuff like this. But you logically look at it, every person is an animal in their own form. It's just how you see it. Everybody, if you actually took, how will we put it this way? When I was a kid and everything else like this, if you took all, the Bugs Bunny and Roadrunners and all those, right? Correct? The Bugs Bunny cartoon? Okay, if I told you, would you believe this? When they created all that, because I'm a loony person through and through, is if I took all the characters that the old cartoons of Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner, all those, and crammed them all together, what do you get? You know this?
Probably not.
I mean, a lot of colors and body parts. And...
No. When they created them all, it took one person. We just say, took you, and we split your personality in multiple directions, and each one of those characters has a personality, but it's one person. That's the way it is. Tasmania was always angry, blah blah blah. All of them, Bugs Bunny getting away with this. It's your personality. So when you cram them all together, it's one person, just split in different directions. And it was cool. Are you
saying they're all Chuck Jones?
No, not Chuck Jones. What I'm getting at is it's a person's personality split multiple different directions, like Bugs Bunny, Tweety, everything else. If you sit there and watch those, you get that part of that one person's personality into that character. So it'd be the same thing as me, like you just asked me the same question, is why don't I look at myself as a furry? In a way I do, because I'm pretty cunning, I'm pretty smart, not in certain places, but pretty cunning and everything else like this. But if that was the case, I'd be my Bugs Bunny character, because Bugs Bunny got away with bloody murder. I didn't do that when I was a kid. I got my butt beat more than anything. I got caught more than it was worth. But it's the same thing. I like foxes and everything else. Always have. And some of the foxes that are out there that later in cartoons and stuff like this, it just my mom took me to see the Fox and the Hound, and it was just one thing after another, and I just like foxes. I always have when I was a kid and stuff like this. It's just I see
So
myself. I think everybody, in a way, like you're asking the question, do I see myself as a furry? In a way, but I
so
like. Go ahead.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I have a lot to say about this. Like one of the biggest omissions in the museum, which
Mm-hmm.
I uh wish now looking back, I do wish I had done that. But Silas mentioned to me there's a lot of realistic anthro art that at
Mm-hmm.
first glance wouldn't seem to be furry art. But then if you look at it closer, you notice the limbs are not like an actual animal. The hands are a little bit bigger. The paws are a little bit bigger. There's a little more girth to the forearms, and all
Mm-hmm.
of those little differences, and then the face has more ability to emote and express, uh, and it's subtle,
Hmm.
like, but when you see it, then you can't not see it. Uh, there's a lot of furry art that is like very realistic. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there are they have their fans, and Silas I think is one of their fans. But of
Hmm.
course Silas just loves everything. Beyond him, like there's more to the fandom than just the contemporary cartoony things, and I did try to capture that here.
Hmm.
Um, there is more to anthro art than just that, but that is a
Oh
lot of what the
yes.
contemporary fandom is nowadays.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha.
Like
Okay.
people who are fans of anthro animals are furries,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not in here in an anime avatar. You're not in here as something else. You're in here as an animal.
I mean, as an animal, yeah,
You're
because I
you're in
see
here as an anthro.
myself.
So,
Yeah, I see myself as a fox, being witty, being myself, blah blah like this, and everything else like this. I guess you could. I don't have nothing against them, against furries or anything like this. Who you are is what you are, and I'm just a fox. That's just the way I see myself. I'm just a fox.
Hmm.
I
Nothing
feel
more,
like
nothing
we could.
less.
I feel like we could spend the entire conversation just trying to figure
Station just
out,
on
like,
what's good.
uh, are like, why would you say you're a fox, but then you're not a furry? I mean, you're a Therian then, if you feel like you are literally a fox and born with that inclination.
Okay, I
Hmm.
got you there. Okay, I can see that. You know, you
But
when you have somebody else put your situation into a different perspective, you look at it differently. And if you only look at it one way, like I am, and you're throwing it in another way, you start looking at it completely. You're making my brain kick into gear.
Hmm.
So what you're throwing, so you got to sit there and analyze it in different directions. See, I'm an old fart, so I've learned to look at things with an open mind, no matter what. And if you don't, like I tell Lion, if you don't move forward of what you're doing and how you are, you're standing back there, and everybody else is just, and you just look like a dot. So if you don't analyze with somebody throwing something differently, like what you're saying, and I haven't got to see all this museum, I think it's pretty cool and
definitely
everything
go
else like.
see 100% before you go leave.
Yeah, I
Take a look at
plan on
Hearthfox.
seeing everything that's in it because you've got a lot of art
Go.
pieces, but a lot of art pieces in here and everything else like this, and it's the artistic setup into it, but you got to look at more at it than just art. What is that? Because see, I'm a draw. I
Well,
draw in my spare time and stuff like this. It's what's the person trying to say? I've always
well,
been that.
but the reason why I'm saying go look at Hearthfox is uh, because he's a Therian, and he actually describes a lot of how he feels personally inside. And You'll just
Okay.
have post after post after post, like response after response after response, going all the way down the list, everyone agreeing with him, and they're all Therians.
Okay.
So, like, there's, I can say this: you're not alone in the way you feel. But I think
Okay.
what I've seen a lot, people just don't like the negative connotation that sometimes the fandom gets. So then they avoid calling themselves furry, even though they clearly are. And then that's what I'm trying to combat. Like the all throughout history, this is nothing new. I mean, if you take a look at attendance, like convention attendance, and it's on an exponential upswing. We just came back from Megaplex, and Hino Pup said they expect 30% growth year after year. They expect 30% growth. They accounted for 10% growth this year, and I think they got more than that.
Wow.
With not even having anyone below 18 in the convention.
Wow.
They yeah, like it was previously very huge with parents and kids. Not even having those people, they still experienced more growth than expected. Um,
Wow.
So,
and you can't, like, it's not like all of a sudden everyone's just becoming a furry. I think people are just coming around to admitting it. And now that the fandom's more mainstream, people are more aware. And it's not as niche as it once was. People are no longer having these thoughts or these feelings within their isolated bubble. They're actually like engaging with other people online and talking about it and sharing their experiences and what they feel. And I would definitely like to promote that.
okay. So I'm gonna ask a question that's gonna backtrack a bit, but a lot of people may have not know the term. What is a Therian, and what is the difference between that and a regular furry?
Oh. So, furry is pretty much anyone who's a fan of anthro-animals, including people who don't have personas. Um, the that's pretty much a broad definition. It's very broad. There's a lot of things within furry that you might not even consider to be furry. Uh, like for instance, Native American animal art, which just looks like animals. And they barely gave them barely any anthro characters, but they do have characteristics and personalities. Um, like, is that furry? The broadest definition of furry would include that. And then it's kind of a sliding scale, and at the other end of the scale, you have Therians, who believe that fundamentally they were born in the wrong body. They are an animal at heart, and that's what they feel inside. Like they're not meant to be a human; they're meant to be a fox, and they're just stuck in this human body. Um, the Fur Science is studying Therians, and they're trying to figure out, like, why do Therians exist? And they haven't come to anything conclusive yet. But what is surprising is very much that those two posts from Hearthfox, which honestly I should probably include the entire Twitter page of that in the museum. That would be pretty fascinating to have here. Just person after person after person, all of them with the Therian label, saying, "Yes, this is me. This is, like, I agree with this, and I have this." I that beeping, by the way, is my pump. Have a, I have diabetes. I have diabetes. Just got to make sure everything's all right.
Okay.
Oh, hope you're doing
There
okay.
we go. But yeah, no. That's what therianthropy is, and I like, I think these are all subjects that frequently get pushed in the background, and we like to anything we see that's weird, we don't want to like deal with it too much. We don't want to think about that too much. But I see something that I don't see that it's weird. I see that there's a lot of people who are all saying the same thing.
Hmm.
So that warrants further research, further discussion, further study.
So I'm gonna ask a bit of a tough question. I don't mean this hatefully. I mean this as like devil's advocate, I guess, is the best way to put it. How much is that
Okay.
of them actually feeling that way versus like social pressure? And I don't mean that in a distasteful, aggressive way. I mean that just as posing the opposite argument, I guess.
I mean, like, what social pressure is there to be an animal?
Hmm.
Like, it seems like that's not a thing that anyone would want to be. It's like, what's the social pressure to be a furry? Well, I guess you want to interact with the fandom. But obviously, there was something about the animals that made you interested in the first place.
Hmm.
So I don't think there's a social pressure to come in. I think there's a social pressure to get out. I
Okay.
think there's a lot of or not come in. Like you want to come in, but then you can't because there's a negative stigma attached.
Hmm.
That is being diminished. Well, it comes and goes in ebbs and flows and waves, but I do feel like that is being diminished nowadays. There's tons of furries in Vrchat and furry creators. I literally just a couple days ago went to the community meetup, and there was a guy in there who runs a yoga group,
Hmm.
and he does yoga instruction, and he made the world. And every week, twice a week, they actually do yoga,
Oh.
and he's a furry. So it's like furries are all over the place, and they're doing all sorts of different things. And here in Vrchat, no one's afraid to call themselves furry.
Hmm.
People just do.
Hmm.
And I feel like if the more people are not afraid to talk about like who they are and what they are, the less stigma will be attached to it. The more everyone will know someone who's a furry, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
And it's same thing with Therians, I'm not saying you're a Therian, but whatever you might be, like,
Hmm.
Just an old man that's got a lot of screws loose. That's what I can tell you. That's about all I can tell you.
Well, to be fair, Raptor,
Well,
most of
like,
us in VR chat have a few screws loose. You wouldn't be here if we didn't.
yeah, that's true. No, actually, you're right. Because if you look about sitting here talking and thinking about it and stuff like this, ouch. If you look at just in the United States, the native Indian by itself, they went by
Native American.
animal names. They went by animal names. All this kind of stuff. They did stuff. They'd work like packs and stuff like this. So you logically, you know, if it's been there, it just all of a sudden it was just pushed to the side and everybody started ignoring it. But you can be anything you want to be if that's what it don't matter if it's in VR or real life. If you feel comfortable. What are you looking at? You're screwing me up, man. What
I'm
are you
looking at
looking
you.
at over there?
I'm looking at you and then the
Oh,
camera.
yeah, oh, I noticed when but still, it's the idea that I get people that come up and ask. My biggest one, it's not my avatar that they're looking at. It's my size. That's what I get in here. It's not my animal. It's why are you so small? Because I can. That'd be the same thing as
Well, I don't. Well, I'm gonna combat that right there. Like you can be anything. It's. I don't think it's a matter of can. It's a matter of are you? Uh, like and I know I keep mentioning his name a lot, but like Silas even told me, the push is so strong.
Hmm.
Like people would get bullied, people would get harassed, they would lose friends and even family, but they still they still stick with calling themselves a furry and being a furry and going to conventions and hanging out with, all of us. And despite all that, the pull is so strong that you can't get rid of it. It's like it's not a choice. And there's a lot of things in life that I think are tied to our intrinsically to our identity, and they're things that we can't really change and have no control over. We only have a little bit of control over our destiny, but I mean, I knew I loved cartoon animals more than anything when I was 5, and that didn't change.
Okay.
I was that way when I like I said, I was a Bugs Bunny fanatic. I collect Bugs Bunny stuff. Boy, do I ever. I got a
Oh
collection
my
that
goodness.
yeah, it's because it was just one of those things that you get into. I don't know how you want to get it. You collect. That's something that even if you think I could, if I could find a Bugs Bunny this size, I'd probably wear it because that's between a fox and a rabbit. I'm one of the, I'm always wound up and going in circles most of the time. I guess it's just the old age. But, you know, it's just like, oh, if you look at it, okay, we look at it another way. My dad's the kind of person that's into eagles. He collects bald eagle stuff. Maybe he sees himself well, he's an old tough bird now. He's 83 years of age. But, it's just one of those things that I think everybody, like you said, even no matter what it is, if it's a type, even if it's a cartoon character, an animal that you like, straight up like, well, okay, it's just another reason. Why does humans collect animals as pets? You sure it ain't the other way around? The animals that are not collecting humans as pets?
I mean,
I had somebody say.
keep in mind.
I had somebody.
Okay, well, keep in mind we've domesticated animals, so they rely
Yes.
on us. They're not wild. Please don't just go to wild animals and then
No,
take them
no.
home
That's
and
not what I
think that
was
that's a
getting
good
at. No,
idea.
but I had a person tell me that way back, and everything else like this. If you ever had a bird and everything else like this, my sister likes birds and stuff like this. That if you go get an animal, and I was raised that if you're going to go get an animal, you find an animal that wants. You don't pick the animal picks you. Straight up.
Mm.
And it was just way because they'll get along with you better, blah blah blah, and everything else like this. And
Well,
it's just weird because to prove the point. What I'm getting at is because there was a pet store here where I'm at, and everything else like this, and I've always wanted a bird, right? But never. But when I went to the pet store, the pet lady there. Now this is a fact that I was there. This bird every time I have tarantulas. And I'd go get crickets and stuff to feed them.
oh
This bird
no.
would come out of nowhere and land on my shoulder. Out of nowhere when it was out of its cage. Every time.
Really?
And the lady finally come up to me and goes, you need to buy this bird. I go, if I had the money, I would. But I go, why? Because we can't get that bird to do nothing. He doesn't come to no one else, but when you walk in this door, since we've had him, every time you come in here, he's on your shoulder. He walks, I'm looking around, he's on my shoulder. And I can literally take him from him, put him on his cage, and he wants back on my shoulder. She goes, nobody in this pet store can do that. We have to fight tooth and nail to get him inside his cage. But you come here and you can put him in there and he'll sit in there and wait for you to shut the gate. And she goes, there's nobody. Like I said, the animal picks you. Every animal I've owned, dog and stuff like this, you just got to know how to treat them and stuff like this, and they can sense that. If you're some kind of person that they don't feel comfortable with, they're not going to have a thing to do with you. It's the same thing.
Do you want to know how I got Tyler as a gator?
Sure. like I said, I've talked to you before, but I really never got to know you that well. So how did you get to be Tyler the Gator?
I pulled his name out of a hat. Well, no, I pulled the animal out of the hat.
Hmm.
So I made this character actually in Ringling College of Art and Design 2012 as part of a computer animation course with Dominic Avant. He was I think, a cleanup artist on Mushu, and we had a bunch of animals in a hat, and we all drew a name out of a hat, an animal, and I drew alligator. Someone wanted to trade me for chicken. I wasn't gonna let that happen. I, I
Chicken.
I've been in Florida my whole life. I've had great experiences with alligators, some really good stories. And I wanted to do alligator. Like, I knew alligators from an angle that most people didn't. Like, that everyone was freaking out. There was what's his name? Steve Irwin was very like, oh crikey, look at the teeth on. She's a beauty. She'll rip your head clean off. Like that kind of attitude. Like, the reason I think he played it up so much was because he didn't want people going and messing with the animals. He kind of showed how crazy it was to go and mess with the animals, and it kind of added to the mystique and the allure that is Steve Irwin. But I think that was his main goal in mind, to show people how dangerous the animals are, and so keep your distance. But alligators are very docile, um, with an asterisk. Like, they eat once a week. When they are hungry, they will go after something that they think is, they can get. Humans are very tall. They don't like something that's very tall, walking on two legs that can, like, they can't, they're low to the ground, so that you look like a giant to them. But then something that is within their eyesight, like a small child or a pet, they will go after. Um, and then the mother with her babies, she will hunt you down. Yeah. So yeah, don't go messing with alligators. But other than that, alligators are very docile, not aggressive. There's even a guy who has an alligator as an emotional support animal.
Hmm.
Herpetologist, so someone who has cared for the gator, I think, his whole life. Yeah. But anyways, we're getting way off track.
Oh,
I pulled alligator out of the hat.
Mm-hmm.
Struggled to make an alligator look halfway decent. It always looked weird, not having anything on top of his head. It was just kind of like the eyes on the head, and then it's just cut off. You expect something to be there. And I was so frustrated over and over again. Nothing was looking right. And I just drew a big mohawk on him. And then I was like, yeah, I guess that can work.
Mhm.
So then I researched, like, well, what is this style kind of most famous with? Punk rock, okay. And then I made him Tyler the Punk Rock Gator.
Hmm.
And I can send you what is it called? The sheet that I made for him, little character sheet.
Hmm.
Made an animation, and project was done. 8 years later, yeah, like, it took a while. I realized that I didn't just draw a cartoon. I drew the kind of person that I wanted to be, but really couldn't or wasn't. Tyler was friendly. He was outgoing. He was uh, not afraid to be himself. He loved crazy music, and he was fun loving, and uh, like, that was the kind of person that I like. He kind of became the gold standard for me.
Hmm.
And since I realized, like, well, adopting him as my persona, I've become more and more like Tyler, and then Tyler becomes more and more like me. and it became like a very helpful vessel. So like that's why sometimes people will be like, "Oh, would you like to be your persona?" And it's kind of a hard question to answer that because like I am him, but then I'm not. It's like there's a duality there.
It's a part of you, but it's not you, I guess, if I'm describing that right.
Wait, why don't you talk about your persona?
Oh, uh,
And I'll get a drink of water.
I honestly, initially, this was just an avatar I picked up a long time ago. Although, ironically, thinking about it, fo- foxes have come up quite frequently in my life, including people who I've dated, whom I didn't know beforehand have been obsessed with. But this avatar, I guess, is been an ever evolving thing. I guess started with Scottish Ripper's Foxy model. I just didn't like the white, threw in the black, and I figured I like the look of this a lot better, and I wore that, and eventually it just became a thing. I
Well,
don't
weren't
really.
you a Nanachi for a while?
I was a Nanachi for the longest time. It was just one of those. It wasn't one thing I think I am or I believe I am. It's just the way I see it is like a virtual representation of like just me. It's not I think I'm a thing or I believe I'm a thing. It's just how I represent myself on the internet, and that's how I see it. I don't think I'm anything different. I don't think this is another alter ego. It's just it is, I guess. I'm not sure how else to describe it, I guess.
Well, yeah. Like not everyone needs to have a persona to be a furry. Although most furries have
Mm,
personas. Um, like all is needed is just an appreciation of animals.
mm,
But then the identity has become such a huge, strong point with the fandom. Uh, like it almost feels like it's not enough to just say, "Oh, you like cartoons," because there's people. There's actually a great example of this. Are you familiar with Litterbox Comics?
I've sounds familiar. I've probably seen or heard it somewhere. I can't place where though.
Okay, she draws all these different comics strips, like a web comic of her family, and her family, like, and she has two kids and like, well, a kid, 5 years old, baby, and then a toddler, and then her husband, and they're all cats.
Mm,
And they live in a world full of anthro animals, and there's dog families, and there's families of like skunks, and there's families of other kinds of creatures and animals, and it's very slice of life, very cute and very funny.
mm,
But she like people have asked, "Are you a furry?" And she's like, from the time that I was growing up, and I'm not too familiar with furries. We just call ourselves cartoonists.
mm,
Um, so like I think there's and again, there's people who will describe in every way the fandom to a degree that most of us wouldn't even understand, or
mm,
like with more clarity than what we have to ourselves.
mm,
And then they just don't really know, or they don't engage in the fandom.
mm,
They have other outlets for it. Um,
mm.
where was I going with this?
I'm not sure. I will say this though. Within the virtual world, I guess, it is I found this is the thing I wear most. I can't see myself in anything else. I've been in human avatars after I found the Nanachi and later on this model. Can't do it. It's weird. It feels weird. Don't like it. And I always end up going back.
I, the funny thing is, I've worn human models, and that feels weirder than anything I've ever done. Like, even just for a brief moment, I
Mm,
cannot be anything other than Tyler.
mm,
Other than I had a Nardo dragon for a while. Other than I had a Durgadol for a while. I cannot be anything other than a furry.
mm,
Like, I'm more comfortable in a fox avatar than I am in a human one.
Mm.
And something, another phrase that came up quite frequently. This is the ideal form.
Mm.
Like for furries, the
Mm.
ideal form is not human.
Mm.
It's animal
Mm.
or animal-like.
Mm. The best way to describe the way I think of not being in this avatar is, I guess, like for those who ever been in full body VR, it's like being without your full body. Or those who don't have been in VR, it's like not having your phone, I guess. Like, you know, when you're missing something and it's just not right, something's weird, I guess.
Oh no, for me it was like it's just like you woke up one day and suddenly you're you're a lamp or something. It's like
Mm.
this is not right.
Mm.
This is absolutely, let's go back.
Mm.
Like that's what that was.
Mm.
I know
Yes.
that feeling. I know that feeling. It's because when I first started in here, uh, I picked a small avatar. I'm 6 foot in real life, and I've always been small. It's not. It's weird to go full size running around. The only reason I go full size to something like this is because I can't reach the freaking buttons. That's the
No.
only why. And
Are
but
you sure it's
I
not
per-
just because you're old and it's easier to not bend your neck down at people
no,
when you
it's
look
not
at them?
that because actually get technical. Looking down doesn't bother me. I look up all the time. That's not an issue looking up at everybody else. I guess you look at it another way. If I'm looking up at you, I'm respecting you for who you are until I have to look down. So
Well,
if you're
we just
small,
had
you're
a
looking
whole.
up.
Mm.
We talked earlier before this started, and I was saying like, can you like we were sitting around a place and he was on the floor and I'm like, you can you just go up a little bit because it's hurting my neck.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. So
And
to respect, help out. I guess it's just in my nature. It's just in my nature. I think it'd be great. We always talk about AIs,
Mm.
right, Line?
Yeah.
Okay, here's a thought that would be really cool. Can you imagine being in VR with an AI and you have a listing of things that you put in that you be honest, and when it gets done, it describes what kind of animal you are.
Mm.
like, but I okay, all of
Not
these like BuzzFeed quizzes and things, I don't think they're actually really telling you, oh, are you a Joey or are you
Yeah.
like no. That's at best it's going to be a simplification. Uh like I think kind of like how you said the animal chooses you, that's what happens. The animal
mm-hmm.
chooses you.
Mm.
And like when I made Tyler, I didn't realize it, even though I had drawn an alligator out of a hat. I didn't realize I made my persona until a lot later. But I always had a connection to alligators, and the more I did research, the more I kind of learned some things like, oh, this is me, and then I created the person that I really wanted to be, without really thinking about it.
Mm.
And then like it will come to you. Like if you're wondering who, like you're new to the fandom and you're wondering, well, what animal am I? Like it's not something that you want to speed run or take a quiz and then that's you now.
Mm.
It's just it takes time, but it will come to you.
Mm.
And then when it does, it's a beautiful thing.
Mm. So I will ask you one thing, I guess. What has been generally, in your experience, the fandom's response to people wanting to come in that is new? I guess older, I guess. Like people who never thought about it, like for when you've gone to cons and stuff of that nature. From like the exact opposite of those who would look the other way.
Uh, well, so you mentioned cons. Like I have an answer
Mm.
for it in VR, but I don't know about like people who Like I know a lot of people just there are some people who are still terrified of the label, so then they'll be like, no, I don't want to go to a convention, and then they hear some people complaining about the not being able to get a hotel room or whatever, and then they'll use that to justify, yeah, I'm not gonna go because it's difficult to get a hotel room. It's like you didn't even try.
Mm.
Um, I think it's more to do with people are just afraid of being bullied, and it's a lot easier to just not say you're furry and avoid bullying altogether. But like, wasn't a furry all throughout high school. I
Mm.
never called myself a furry all throughout high school. I was still bullied.
Mm.
So it's just like you're still gonna get bullied. Just be yourself, and then at least you're not fooling yourself. Like you can fool as many people as you want, but don't fool yourself
Mm.
with who you are. Um, but people knew coming into the event. There was a guy who I actually recently became friends with, who uh it really didn't consider himself a furry, was really trying to beat around the bush any way he possibly could to
Mm.
avoid the furry label or whatever. And then he even spoke with us, and then I asked the question, well, something made you choose this avatar with the Nardo dragon wearing a hoodie. There's something that made you choose this over being a human or anything. And then he's like, well, I just like this guy. I didn't really like the other avatars didn't look so good, but this one did. And like Silas and I like kind of turned to each other, and we knew. And then as soon as he left the room, he's like, yeah, like he's like, I don't think I'm furry. And I was like, oh, well, well, you can be whatever you want to be. And then as soon as he left the room, Silas and I were both like at the same time, oh, he's definitely a furry. Oh yeah. Oh, he's kidding himself.
Mm.
And it's like I think like every time I want to say the stigma is wearing out, like I have to keep in mind that I'm hanging out with friends that I've known for years. I'm hanging out with like I'm in VRchat where furries are all over the place. Like there's some people who are still going to school. There are people who work on oil fields and oil rigs. There are people like working in places where if you say you're a furry, you say you hang out with people from the LGBT community. That's not going to be good. Even in this day and age, in a post modern family society, we still have that, and it bothers me.
Mm.
Um, like we talk a lot about identity, about being furry is not something that you choose; it's something that you are, and like engaging with the fandom, that's your choice. But there's something in you that says that pulls you to animals. Um, and same thing is true for people who are LGBT or queer, or in my case, asexual. Like that's not something that you can just change. It's it's an identity. It's something that's within you, and then it takes something really traumatic if it does change. But that traumatic thing would then like cause a lot of problems. The big thing I think growing up, which I'm sure you remember this, but most people my age will definitely remember this. How terrible it was to go to school in the early 2000s,
Mm.
and how much anti-LGBT there was, how much bullying there was, and there were a lot of news stories about kids committing suicide like every day. Um, and then that spawned a whole upswing of well, we need to actually like that's not working. The conversion camps, which kids don't change and then they come out and they kill themselves, and the ones that do change, their life is not made better. They're self-loathing. We call them self-loathing gays. Like, that's not that's not. It's more fooling yourself about who you are. I don't know how long it will be before society accepts everyone for who they are.
Well,
But
to be fair,
yeah,
not everything can be accepted by everybody. Everyone lives and grows a certain way with the people around them, and trying to convince or force someone to do otherwise, whether it be furry or non-furry, or what say you, a lot of people are going to stick to what they know, and a lot of the time that's where they'll lean. And
but people need to know more.
mm,
People need to educate themselves, and they need to learn that humanity is more than just their little box.
mm,
Like, I like personally when I first made this museum, I didn't think that therianthropy was, it was just weird to me.
mm,
But then I looked into it, and then I found, okay, there's an entire community about this of tons of people all saying and feeling the same thing.
mm,
That doesn't make sense unless like there's something there that is intrinsic to their identity. And that identity, I think, is something that needs to be protected.
mm,
My Okay, so a little personal history. Uh, my my father was not the greatest guy. He was very emotionally abusive. Like my mother actually ran away, took me and ran away to England when I was 5 years old to get away from him. He would scream and yell. Uh, when my parents divorced, I was forced to go visit him, unfortunately. Um, and he would call me sissy. And
mm,
I just thought, well, that's just him. He just says those things. He wants me to be a man or whatever. And uh, I wasn't the football playing kid. I wasn't a jock. I wasn't a bully. Um, he was expecting something else, other than what he got. And then he kicked me out. Uh, I like the funny thing is it would be a comedy if it wasn't a tragedy. I told him that I had a foot fetish. I admitted it. He didn't so much care about that, but what he over and over again, what he was harping on me, was it a woman's feet, or was it a woman's foot? Like he wanted me desperately to. I know now, 2020 hindsight, that he wanted me to be straight
mm,
because I wasn't getting any girlfriends. I wasn't interested in getting any girlfriends. Um, and I told him no, it was a guy's foot, and, and in all the art that I like, it's all male. Um, but I'm a terrible gay person. I never want to do anything with another man. And also at the same time, I didn't want to do anything with girls. I just didn't want to do any of that stuff. Um, and then it wasn't until I watched BoJack Horseman that like there was a whole story with Todd where it's like he didn't want to have sex with the girl even though her family begging him to have sex with her, and they couldn't even fake it. And she's like, "Oh, you're Ace." And as soon as I heard that that was a thing you could be, I'm like, "Yes, that's what I am."
mm,
I had gone 28 years not knowing what my sexual orientation was. But like if I had known about the existence of ace people in middle school, that would have helped me tremendously.
mm,
Um, and if people were able to just accept that instead of like my father kicking me out and then lying to the family and then everyone thinking things and that are all the wrong thing, uh, I wouldn't be, in the position that I'm in right now. But now that I'm saying those words out loud, I'm kind of glad I'm in the position I am right now. Don't. I'm no longer forced to be under that. I'm in a community that accepts me for who I am. You know, flaws and all, kinks and all, like everything. Like I can be my actual self, not the person that I have to put on in order to be accepted in society. Like I can't go to work and talk with people the same way that I talk with furries. Um, I can't make friends in this. Even when I'm talking with friends, it's a different mask that you have to wear.
Hmm.
Um, and then the only time I actually feel myself is when I'm Tyler. As strange as that might be to some people, this to me is this is this is me more than anything else. This is me.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing all that. I know sounds like a lot of that may have been really hard.
Yeah, but it's a growing experience. You
Mm.
live, you learn, you grow. And if I didn't have that experience, I definitely wouldn't have thought the way that I do today. I might not have been open enough to make a museum like this, which features so many different uh, people from diverse communities.
Mm.
I mean, like the subculture exhibit. I mean, there's a lot of communities there that get a lot of flack from a lot of people, uh, including some that are under attack today,
Mm.
very heavily. But you reach out, you learn from, like, you make friends with people, you talk with people,
Mm.
and then you find out things that you didn't realize before.
Mm.
Um, Something I do want to say, uh, the ABDL community definitely gets a lot of hate, and it's very undue and it's unjust. Someone described it for me, like they for those who don't know, ABDL, adult baby diaper lover, starts off great and then it gets worse from there. But someone who was in that community explained it like they remember a time when they were a kid, when they received attention and love and care from the parents, and then that attention, love, and care went away when they grew older and became adults. And there's people who, we're talking people who have like serious jobs in IT, people who have serious jobs in like CAD designing, like who make the world operate, um, who are in these communities, and they loan for that.
Mm.
And then everyone tries to misconstrue it as, oh, they're pedophiles or whatever, and that's not the case at all. Like those misconceptions would go away if you just talk with people.
Mm.
And it feels weird that I'm the one telling everyone to talk with people. It felt like I wasn't the most social guy in middle school,
Mm.
but now we are. Like, talk with people and don't talk at them. Like, listen to them, to what
Mm.
they're really saying, and then you'll
Mm.
learn
Yeah.
more.
I think that's a sad thing about modern society is regardless of what end of this spectrum you may sit, whether you're for or against it, a lot of people don't talk to each other anymore. You would think in a modern day and age with the internet where we could reach out to anybody, talk with anything. Hell, look at VRChat. I live in the US and I'm friends with now people across over in Asia and over in Europe. You would think with this much communication people would communicate, but in retrospect it does the opposite. I haven't seen, like, as I grew older and saw this thing flourish, I've seen less people communicate together, more people just yell at each other and use the internet to make themselves feel better, not necessarily speak like you and I are. It doesn't happen anymore. It's
Well,
sad.
there's there's two sides to that.
Hmm.
one of my very first experiences in Vrchat, I met someone who was trans, and I didn't really understand like who trans people were at the time, and so I asked them, I- if you, and this is going to sound a little bad, but keep in mind, learning experience. I grew up. I asked him, like, if everyone called you by your preferred pronoun, they called you female, and society respected you, and you could wear whatever you want, and you could go in high heels and dress, and there was no issue with any of that. Would you still undergo the hormone replacement therapy? Because that would like permanently change who you are. And he said yes, because when I look in the mirror, I hate what I see.
Hmm.
And that kind of made me have the realization like, oh, I'm a dick.
Hmm.
Uh, like the uh with trans people, it kind of like Therians, they just see themselves fundamentally differently. And then when you do, like, you talk with people, you do the research, you find things. More than 20,000 people in a Harvard study who underwent hormone replacement therapy, most of those people saw a dramatic reduction in suicidal ideation, reduction in smoking, and many of them are living stress-free,
Hmm.
compared to 1% of people who actually regretted it. And then I went and I saw some ads for a movie on YouTube, which is like, trying to paint trans representation anywhere that it is, like, oh, it's a menace to society or whatever, and they're trying to push it down on us. And it's like, well, no, trans people were here since the dawn of time. And we're just now getting around to the point where we're saying it's okay to show those people on television, and it's okay for people to educate themselves and be aware. There are forces at work that don't want people to be educated. They don't want people to be aware of anything because it goes against their moralistic beliefs. And we're starting to see the holes in those moralistic beliefs. Like, did you know that the church actually officially ordained same-sex marriages for the first 1,300 years?
I did not know that. When did that happen? May I ask?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was always like that. And then the Vatican records actually show, homosexuals being married. And I think there were even people who were homosexuals that were saints. But then all that stuff got buried in 700 years ago, when I think some people were looking around, and they made this decision, oh, homosexuality is degenerate. And it says it's a sin in the Bible, and we're by promoting these, like sanctioning these unions, we're promoting sin. But then, like, I asked my priest, like, but you marry sinners. So how is it okay to marry those sinners, and it's not okay to marry people who are gay? And his answer was like one of the worst answers ever.
Hmm.
Um, like, he didn't really. He has his beliefs, and people have, like, these beliefs that they're taught, that they're trained, and people don't. It's very clear that people don't reach out, and they don't talk with other people, and they don't try to learn or understand their experience. This is the issue that we're having today. But the flip side of that is, now the conversation I had with that person was in Vrchat. In my personal life, I don't know anyone who's trans. In my personal life, there aren't that, like, outside of the furry fandom and the internet, there's not that many people I know that are gay.
Hmm.
like now being in the fandom, everyone that I know is gay to some extent. Like, so it seems very strange to be hearing messages that, oh, you shouldn't trust people who get they're sinners and this and that, and it's like, well, the people who called themselves my family kicked me out. The people who called themselves my godmother and godfather, who are supposed to protect me, straight up told me that they're not going to do that. They're not going to help me if my father kicks me out. Uh, the people that I thought were the people who loved me, they didn't actually love me for who I am. That love was very conditional. Um, People maintained whatever mentalities they had of me, and like the fandom was the exact opposite. The fandom was open, welcoming, and uh, it was it honestly saved my life.
Mm.
At one point, making this museum, Silas asked me, like, how could a person, like, I told him about how I felt suicidal in middle school, and that my like all these terrible things happened, and he's like, how can a person like you, who's lived such a such a life of hardship and turmoil, make a museum like this, which is so happy and uplifting and positive. And I know it's strange that I'm saying that now in the Halloween update, but uh, it really was the fandom that helped me so much.
Mm.
And in many ways, this museum honors that.
Mm. Okay. So I do greatly appreciate you sharing all of that with us today. Where can people find
Thank you.
this amazing place? Where can they find you?
Oh, well, obviously the museum. You can just come into VRChat and just look up Virtual Furry Museum, and it's right here. You can connect with me. I'm Sotalo. You can find me on Blue Sky uh, or Twitter. I'm actually going to be using Blue Sky more often these days. And you can find my art on DeviantArt. Uh, and yeah, we have a movie group that we run. If people really want to join me on that, that's usually with my closer friends, um, and theirs as well. But really, I think if anyone likes the museum, come into VR chat. Like, if you don't have VR, you don't need VR to come in and see the museum. You can go on desktop mode. But I do strongly recommend you get at least the Quest 2, or the Quest 3 is coming out now, and get a link cable. And if you have a PC, a gaming PC, you'll be able to come in here and experience the full experience. Um, you'll be able to see everything, and it feels like you're actually in a museum.
Mm.
Oh, and also support the artists. Like, if you see someone's art that you like, go to them and tell them that you love their art. And if you found it here, make sure to mention that you found it here, and you came from this place. Uh, I'm sure they would absolutely love to hear that. I know there are some artists who have reservations about being here. Like, very few, not too many. A lot of people love being here,
Mm.
but I'm sure when they hear like good stories, it makes them feel a lot more confident in themselves and a lot more comfortable uh, being in a place like this.
Mm. All right. Mm. You want to close us out?
Sure will. And on that note, folks, it doesn't matter what you are or who you are. Be what you want to be. Have fun in life. Guess what? From experience, the clock ticks faster. Have a good one, folks. Take care.